We've been doing these shows twice a week for about the last 4 months now. It's going great. Thank you for being a part of this. It's been really a lot of fun. We've got, as we do this, we kind of have three programming formats. We have a guest speaker, or we have a news roundup, or we do a policy segment. There is policy and there is news, but we're going to do a one-on-one conversation with Michael Doyle in just a moment. Before we do that, I want to talk about a little bit of some pretty exciting stuff happening around here. This morning, I got to brief congressional staffers on the idea of the Starship Singularity. As some of you know, me and Michael Mealing and Peter Gerritsen have all kind of embraced that idea. Gerritsen recently issued a paper on the Starship Singularity. I will post that link in the chat in a moment. And so this was a briefing to congressional staffers and various think tank members. I'm not going to name names, but when I saw the list of attendees, I was pretty surprised. It wasn't just congressional staffers. There were some very, very senior people in the Department of the Treasury, and also some very senior people at the National Science Foundation. So pretty cool to be able to brief those folks. I was pretty happy with that. And as a result of doing that briefing, there were 6 of us on that call. We're going to duplicate that here on our show, schedule permitting, with each of those folks. So watch for that. That's probably going to be coming in April. We're going to dedicate most of April to Starship, with the idea that it's going to launch in April. So that's going to be a big focus of our programming next month, is focusing on this new rocket, not just on the rocket itself, but on the capabilities that it enables. So pretty happy about that. That's going to be a lot of fun. We've got next week, we've got Namrata Goswami. Dr. Goswami is going to come in and talk about policy. We've got Jeremy coming in from Rogue Aerospace. I'm really interested in that. I don't know anything about their company other than what I've read on the internet, so that's going to be some inside scoop that I'm really looking forward to. And let's see, who else do we have? Well, I can't name 2 of them. So there's 2 that are not yet unconfirmed. I can neither confirm nor deny. So we've got a great guest list coming up for the end of March and into the beginning of April. So stick with us. It's going to be a fun show. Last night, we had a great show with the Mars Society's Red Planet Live program. Definitely want to catch that in our archives from yesterday. And with that, I'm going to bring on our guest. Let's bring. So this is Michael Doyle. He's going to give you his background. We're going to talk a lot about Space Northwest and the programs that he's doing. But Michael, great to have you here. I'm really glad that you're on our show with us here.
I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you so much, Michael, for the invitation.
I've been trying to get you guys on this show for really since December, when you had your big event, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you tell that story. But I've been trying to get you on the show since December. So really happy that our schedules have aligned here. Yeah. Before we get into all the cool stuff the Space Northwest is doing, I want to spend a couple minutes talking about your background. What's your origin story, and what are your superpowers?
Well, I don't know about superpowers, but I can tell you my origin story. Right now, I am the co-founder and president of Space Northwest. We are a nonprofit dedicated to catalyzing the regional ecosystem for space activity, space exploration, maximizing the potential of the Pacific Northwest in humanity's journey to space. So maybe going back 7 years, that wasn't me, but going way back, I was, you talk about when did the space bug bite you? It must have been in the cradle, because I was always interested in space, and science in general, natural history, and wanted to be an astronomer. As I was in the Cosmos Voyager generation. And when I was looking at colleges, I wanted to go where Carl Sagan was, because that was my hero, and I really loved what he did, and that was what I was interested in the most. Making an impact in the world through science communication. So I went to Cornell, and did my undergraduate there in physics with a concentration in science communication. The first year that I arrived as a freshman, I was like, oh, great, I'm going to sign up for Carl Sagan's course, because there was he only taught one course to undergrads, right? He was mostly focused on his grad students. But that course was not offered to underclassmen, it was upperclassmen only. And then 2 years went by, he didn't teach any undergrad courses. And then we got to my senior year, last bite at the apple, he's teaching a course.
Cool.
Restricted to underclassmen. So basically, I just showed up I wrote him a letter, and I showed up at his door and delivered it. And I was like, I want to be in your class. This is ridiculous. And I got in. It was a limited enrollment that he was accepting, and he accepted me into the group. And it was like Cosmos in real time with lots of math.
Did he teach in class with his speech pattern about billions and billions, billions and billions?
Okay, so I think he made fun of himself one time with that. But one of the things that I really loved and appreciated learning firsthand is Sagan was really renowned for his back of the napkin calculations, right? Kind of coming up with an idea and then quickly trying to figure out, does this make sense? Is it worth pursuing?
Wow.
And we did a Blackboard exercise on, okay, so how long would the Earth last if you switched off the sun right now? Okay, what's the math you need to work that out? What are the variables? What are the factors?
Right.
So it was fantastic. And the other thing that was shocking to me as somebody who had kind of grown up like, you do your math, you get the right answer. Sagan was like, it's astronomy, you approximate, right? Okay. So if you're off by a factor of 2, no big deal. Off by a factor of 10, all right, that's not good, right? You got to try to get a little bit more refined.
Okay.
So yeah, it was wonderful. And I did actually intern at a science television program in New York.
Really?
Yeah, innovation.
I've known you for nearly 10 years. I know none of this. I think I've known you for about 8 years before you moved to Canada.
Yeah, that's right.
I've never heard this story. This is fantastic.
That's right. Well, you're definitely a character in this story.
Yeah.
As it evolves. Well,
so all right. So let me, before we jump into that, what is it like going to class with Carl Sagan as your professor? I mean, there aren't that many people I can ask that question of.
Yeah, well, it was, like I said, a relatively small class, and he had, he had his topics to cover, and it went from planetary science to biology. I remember one paper was, is the evolution of intelligent life inevitable? So we had to do a paper on that. We had to do a paper on this scientific process and reasoning, right? How do you know, like what's the core of science? Why does it work? How does it work, right? And he was the one who introduced me to consistency is the hallmark of truth, which is really really good, right? And of course, Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, right? I know at that time he was very, thinking a lot about the pseudoscience that was washing through the culture. And then sometimes it was, where are our papers? Why haven't they been graded yet? And the teaching assistant was like, well, he's Carl Sagan. He's been in Washington for a week.
Right.
He's
a pretty good
been
answer.
down at JPL, right?
Yeah. I know people who have Neil deGrasse Tyson as an advisor and a professor occasionally. I know several of the folks at the Hayden Planetarium. One of them is an advisor for us, which is pretty awesome, Dr. Michael Shara. But yeah, I mean, there are not very many legends in the space community. Both Rick Tomlinson, and Peter Diamandis were influenced by being around Gerard O'Neill.
Yeah.
But no, you're the first Saganite that I've known. So that's pretty neat. Good for you. That's cool. All right. So what's the rest of your story? How do you get from Cornell to Seattle?
Yeah. Well, the rest of the story was, the science broadcasting bubble, if there was such a thing, burst at the time that I left college, and I ended up doing some media on the side, some television that was not science related, and software programming to pay the bills. And eventually that led me to Wall Street and a lengthy career at Goldman Sachs, which was fascinating, fun, interesting. But after umpteen years, I was like, I think there's something else. There's something missing. And my children, because I had kids by that time, started getting interested in space. And I remember watching the test flight of the Orion capsule. I think that was in 2014, in December. And, with my kids and watching it go up, and I'm like, there's something, like, it's such a moment for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is telling you something. In 2015, I saw a tweet from NASA, come join our hackathon. And I was like, NASA hackathon? They're calling to me? Wait a second. I can do something with NASA? Okay, let me try to do this. Oh, but I have my daughter's robot team that I'm coaching that weekend. But my wife said, cancel it. Go to the hackathon. You never know what's going to happen. And sure enough, I had no idea. I found my calling, renewed calling, and I knew that it was space. I went to the hackathon the following year with my daughter. We did a project that became a global top 25 project out of a field of 2,000 from somewhere around 25,000 hackers around the world. Which was really thrilling. Along the way, we met astronauts. We ended up going to NASA headquarters. We were featured makers at the World Maker Fair. It was so much fun. It led me to another hackathon on the West Coast, and ultimately to Seattle, where I attended the New Space Conference, which is where I met you, Michael.
Right.
What
year was that?
That was 2016.
16.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So by that time, I had kind of gotten connected with the new space scene in New York, and I knew its size. And they were all saying, "We're going to the New Space Conference in Seattle next year, and you're coming with us." I'm like, "I am." Yes. And none of them went, but I went, and I realized that the space scene out here is incredible. And if I wanted to make a move, this was a good place to do it, particularly since a friend of mine from Goldman Sachs was working at Amazon and said, hey, I could use someone like you on my team. And so it all just kind of fell into place. Left New Jersey, where I'd lived for most of my life, and came out here.
It's pretty amazing. Most people in this field have to take a leap of faith. Somewhere along the line, they're like, okay, hold your breath, and then jump, and then jump. Um, it's kind of amazing. I don't want to derail the rest of our conversation, but Michael Mealing, do you know Michael Mealing?
I do not.
Starbridge. He's a venture capitalist out in. I was about to say Georgia. He's not in Georgia anymore. Washington D.C. I've known Michael for three Michaels. Wow, how weird is that? I've known Mealing for the most of 20 years. He's my second oldest space friend. So thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. He's got a question in the chat. I'm going to try and read it, and he knows, and I know, but maybe you don't, Doyle. We're mimicking Rick Tomlinson. So I will try to do it in the same voice that Tomlinson does, but this is his question. He's talking about Sagan. Did he ever get into detail on his views of human settlement of space? There is a myth in our business that there are Saganites, von Braunians, and O'Neillians. Von Braunians say, and I'm going to butcher this, but your nation will go to space and you will watch it on television and be proud of your national astronauts. That would be in a German accent, which I cannot do. Saganites are the scientists. The scientists will go to space, but don't touch it. And the O'Neillians are like, let's all go do the crazy crap humans do. And that's a pretty common theme. Like Rick Tomlinson, Reverend Rick, does that with a really great accent and a lot of theatrics, which I cannot copy. But the question that Mealing wants to know is, was Sagan as really velvet rope as he was made out to be? He was like, we're like, look but don't touch, send robots if you have to, but we're going to do it remotely. Is he wants to know, was Sagan more hands off?
So yeah, this is really interesting because I don't recall specifics about this particular aspect. However, there was nothing that ever came across to me that he did not think that settlement beyond the Earth was not humanity's destiny. It was, right? We're explorers and we go out. Yeah.
Okay.
The notion that, we stay home and we send, robots or scientists, right, to just have a look. I never got that sense. And maybe that was just me being, a O'Neillian under the covers without knowing it.
Right.
Not really, tuned in to pick up on that, but I didn't get that from him.
The reason that our industry kind of takes on that role, and I'm going to be putting words into both Mealing and Tomlinson's mouth, is that the Planetary Society does have a pretty strong policy about look but don't touch. The Space Frontier Foundation, the O'Neillians, have a policy of let's go and let's go crazy. And the National Space Society, led by a lot of von Braunians, are look what your government program is doing. So interesting to have first-person perspective that you're saying, no, you didn't see that in the man himself. Maybe the agency, I'm going to say that the organization that he founded definitely has that look but don't touch mentality, but really cool to hear that the man himself didn't necessarily have it.
I've got no recollection of that kind of thing.
Absolutely brilliant. Good to know that. I'm really happy about that. Okay, so now you're in Seattle. You've got the space bug is bitten. It's unrecoverable. You'll never be the same again. Your daughter has kind of gotten you into it by doing some apps. Where are you now?
Well, I should also add one of the key things that happened in between that New Space Conference and moving to Seattle was the International Space University's Executive Space Course that happened in October. And I did an interview at Amazon. I came back out, for the ISU course. I flew straight from the Makers Fair in Queens, where we were demoing the project that my daughter and I had done at the hackathon. And that was a fantastic experience, and that really helped build my network here, which I eventually leveraged when I went to Seattle's hackathon and saw not what I expected. New York's Space Apps Challenge hackathon, the NASA hackathon, was amazing. And I was surprised that there wasn't a space presence. I knew there was a space presence in Seattle, but it wasn't at the hackathon. And so the next year rolled around and I was like, maybe I can help. And the lead organizer was like, oh, that's great. You're the man. Bye. And I'm like, great. Could I have the login credentials for like the Twitter account and the radio silence? So I took on lead organizer and I brought the Seattle community into the NASA hackathon, which had been attracting people from the tech community and the startup community, as well as people who had space and GIS background. And, that kind of became our mission, right, with Space Apps, was to bring these communities together, mix the ingredients, see what would spark and what would happen. And following the hackathon in 2018, we did it again in 2019. We collaborated with Seattle space entrepreneurs to put on a Techstars startup weekend focused on the space vertical. And if you've ever heard of Startup Weekend, you could think of it like a hackathon. It's an event that takes place over an entire weekend, but instead of a technology project that you're creating a business, right? And you go through the process of, understanding your customer, refining your problem statement, pitching, coming up with a MVP, putting it all together with a business plan, and presenting it to judges. And that happened in 2019, and it was great. COVID hit. We took everything virtual. We did the hackathon virtually, but we added in a monthly meetup called Space Data Hackers, because it was just so much fun to bring this community of people who love space and data together, but they were only getting together once a year, and that didn't seem fair, especially for people who were just starting their journey with using data, using space data specifically, and the tools on top of it. And so we established a monthly meetup where we do speakers and community engagement, and just like, hey, what are you working on? And people just showing cool stuff. We relaunched that this past month, February. Next week we're doing our next event, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, so the Space Data Hackers kind of kept going, Space Apps virtually, but I feel like we really hit our stride in terms of events with the Techstars Startup Weekend space that we did in December, which I think you pointed to at the beginning of the episode, Michael. That was kind of my dream come true. It was a gathering of people who were seasoned space people, right, from places like Blue Origin and SpaceX and Boeing, either current or former, people who had never done anything space before in their lives, people who were just trying it out, and everybody got into it. It was an amazing community experience with almost the entirety of the 50-person audience getting up and pitching an idea. And 7 teams resulted, went through the weekend. The teams were like helping each other. right? Asking what do you need. There was a fantastic community vibe going on there. And after all was said and done, they kept getting together over the course of the next week. On LinkedIn, pictures started showing up with groups of them in other forums, other events, and several continued to work on their ideas as they for months.
Yeah.
I don't know how many are still going, but the point of a startup weekend is the education and the connections, and fostering the community, fostering those connections is how the ecosystem grows and strengthens, and that's what Space Northwest is all about.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about Space Northwest as an organization. You brought in Space Data Hackers, you brought in Space Entrepreneurs Network, Sean McClinton over there. So what is Space Northwest? Why does it matter? Why should we care? And we're going to come back to the Techstars thing in a second, but let's get the
sure
part.
Yeah, so Space Northwest effectively grew out of all these programs that you're talking about. Sean McClinton had Space Entrepreneurs, right? And he's been doing that for I think 8 years now, longer than any of the stuff I've been involved in. And he and I had been working together. James Burke from the Mars Society joined in Space for Space App Seattle for doing the hackathon, and the three of us were like, we just got to combine efforts, and we brought the three of us together, brought our programs together. We formed Space Northwest. A lot of input from Stan Shull of Alliance Velocity, who serves as an advisor to us. Kali Maloney of Olicomms currently is an advisor to us as well. She brings a wealth of experience, having been the CEO of AFA for many years. And
That's the
Aerospace Futures Alliance. Yes, thank you. So we've got a fantastic group of individuals contributing to the Space Northwest vision, which is to really maximize the potential of the Pacific Northwest for humanity's future in space. We've got a great ecosystem, right? Lots of pieces of the puzzle that have grown from the heritage of aerospace, right, and from the entrepreneurism that's inherent in the region. We've got the tech community and everything that's grown up around Amazon and Microsoft. And when I joined Amazon, it was not a space company, and then now it is, right, with AWS Ground Station and Project Kuiper, and then all the offerings of AWS aerospace and satellite and more. So there's lots of wonderful activity that's going on, and one of the things that really kind of galvanized us when we were in the early stages of forming Space Northwest was that the National Science Foundation put out a bulletin that they were having a new program called Regional Innovation Engines, right? And the blueprint is kind of based off of what the state of Massachusetts did with its biotech industry, right? You can think of it, right? You think of Massachusetts as like a wonderful ecosystem for that kind of thing. But about 10 years ago, they were looking at their ecosystem in a similar way, where there was not sufficient connection between use-driven research and innovation, making it all the way to market, making it into the hands of entrepreneurs, and driving economic activity that was not just accruing to particular urban areas, but was shared across the state, right? And so the regional innovation engine idea is about taking those components, right, that you already have, connecting them, building on them, bringing them together with a strategy and a vision that really accelerates innovation, right?
Mhm.
So you're talking about what are the institutes and capabilities and players. You're talking about not just academic institutions and companies, entrepreneurs and startups, capital, manufacturing capabilities, supply chain, and workforce development, right? We know that there are jobs in space in the state of Washington that are going unfilled, right?
Thousands, like more
Right,
than 15,000. Like it's a
right,
giant number of unfilled positions. Yeah.
right. So how do you fill those positions with local talent, with talent that comes in from outside of the state? How do you ensure that the benefits are accruing not just to the cities, not just like up and down I-5, but to the entirety of the state, the rural areas, the tribal areas,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? How are you, and this is foundational, how are you ensuring that DEI is embedded into what we do, that we have equitable outcomes for our journey to space? And that to me is really important,
Yeah.
right? This aspect of inclusion, right? I spent a great deal of my career thinking that I had no place in space, and I found out I did, right?
Brilliant.
And there's incredible power that gets unlocked when somebody who doesn't think they have a place discovers that they do. So education is also critical. We're talking not just about your PhDs, right? But STEM from K through 12, and also technicians, and the kind of non-degree jobs that are essential for the manufacturing components of going to space.
Right. Absolutely. There are so many holes in this field that they're just dying for some person with a certain amount of ambition, a certain amount of brain cells to just step in and say, "This is mine. I want to do this. This is the piece I want to work on." And it's wide, wide, wide open. Michael Mealing is making a comment. You guys, other than my connection to you, you're also 1 degree of separation to the Mars Society and the Moon Society. Michael was the president of the Moon Society when James was the vice president. And Mealing also ran a TechStars program in Atlanta. So obviously, y'all should get together after this and connect for the next TechStars Space Startup Weekend, which is when is that?
Yeah, so we're thinking that it's going to be in December again,
Okay.
because we had some really good synergies between doing the hackathon in October, right, and saying, hey, you just worked on something that could be really cool, right? You want to take this further? Would you like to start a space company? Come to TechStars Startup Weekend Seattle Space Edition in December.
So
Haven't nailed it down yet, but yeah.
sorry. There's some natural synergy between the Space Hackers Network and the startup network. Like they just they mesh very nicely here in Seattle. But it's important to note. The TechStars program was not local Seattle people. There were plenty of them, maybe 50, maybe 60%. But there were a lot of people who got on airplanes to come to Seattle to be a part of that thing. Yeah.
You're quite correct. For the event in December, we had people coming in from San Francisco, from
Mhm.
San Diego,
Yeah.
from Hawaii,
I met
Boston, New York,
Philadelphia, and Boston and New York. Those are ones I
and
personally met. Yep.
and Ghana.
And Ghana, right? Ghana, because Ghana's building its space agency and they're trying to figure stuff out. Yeah, right. And what's your partnership with the center, the facility that we used?
So the facility was the Mission Accelerator Center,
Right.
and it's overseen, if I'm remembering correctly, by the Defense Innovation Unit
Yep.
of DoD and the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition, which is a partner of Space Northwest, signed on to our NSF engine proposal. They helped make the connection and are very passionate about using that space to advance the ecosystem for space, for defense, for sure. But as you know, there's plenty of overlap with space and defense. We're really, really fortunate to have access to that space.
Yeah, they were really terrific hosts.
They were wonderful.
I got to know Tanya and Johannes pretty well over that weekend. They were terrific hosts. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's kind of the overview. So we've got a guy who's been interested in space for a long, long time, lucky enough to have and worked hard enough to get in a class with Carl Sagan. Fast forward, kind of moved away from space, came back to it at the right place at the right time, and his kid was a catalyst for it. So I think that's pretty awesome. Then you jump in with both feet with the data side of space. Now, the Seattle is the cloud capital of the world between Azure and AWS, and then all the other organizations as well, all the support organizations. But then you mix in space, you've got Kuiper and Starlink being constructed in Redmond. We are the small satellite capital of the world by a lot. If the world launches, let's call it 2,000 satellites a year, which is kind of where we're on pace for right now, 80% of them are constructed within 100 miles of where we're sitting right now. So that's pretty amazing. So you got this convergence of hardware know-how to build the physical machines and the digital know-how to get the data from the sky down to the ground. So what does space, and then Space Northwest as a kind of organizing, catalytic, community building program, what are your goals in terms of like putting Seattle on the map, bringing awareness to our region, showcasing our capabilities? What are you doing in that respect?
I can tell you something that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks. So we were invited by the Defense Innovation Unit and New Space New Mexico to be a part of the State of the Space Industrial Base Conference. So this is a conference that has kind of a main event in Albuquerque each year about the space industrial base, right? And kind of satellite workshop conferences that are happening around the country. One slated for Florida. Ours is going to be Pacific Northwest focused and happening on April 4th and 5th of this year. And the topics, right, the idea is that the workshops cover specific topics, and we've got 2 tracks that are being filled by experts from the local ecosystem as well as from farther afield. The one is hybrid space architecture, When we're talking about that, we're talking about kind of the interweaving of commercial and military satellites in a secure, robust framework that establishes an outer net for the Earth. And the other topic is advanced energy and propulsion. And we've got very interesting companies engaged in both of those topics here. And we've got experts flying in from around the country to huddle up and think about, well, what's our current state? What do we need? Where should this go? And producing white papers that will ultimately be collated and presented at the New Mexico event.
Yeah, it's I can't speak highly enough for this. I've been involved with New Space New Mexico's program. They bring together Air Force Research Lab, Defense Innovation Unit, and the Chief Scientist of U.S. Space Force. And let me tell you, those three folks embodied through Mosier, Colonel Felt, who Colonel Felt has moved to another post, so I don't know who the replacement is. But between General Butow, Colonel Felt, and Dr. Joel Mosier, it's an amazing program. And it's a mouthful to say the state of the space industrial base over and over and over again. But the documents that they produce, they've now created 4. They go straight to the think tanks in Washington, D.C. They go straight to the congressional programs in Washington, D.C. They go to various department heads, Department of Energy. I can say for certain that some stuff that came out of one of those meetings turned into a policy, which turned into a budget, which has turned into live research and development that's actually being funded. So it is amazing to see how this particular set of meetings turns into national policy, research and development budgets, and companies. So I definitely encourage folks to catch this meeting if they can get to Seattle. There are several. I've posted links to the 3 different programs here a moment ago, so that's in the chat. There are 3 different ones. But if you want to come to Seattle, Michael Mealing, you should get on an airplane. I think I got you to go to one of the events a couple of years ago, if I remember right. So
there is a virtual option, and that's open.
Yeah. I forgot about the virtual option. Please say more about that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, you can definitely sign up for the virtual option from the website, and Zoom in for the plenary sessions as well as for the workshops. I'm pretty sure that the in-person is by invitation. So kind of keeping it a little bit tight at this point, and we're just about at capacity. But it's going to be great, and for the public in person, we are having a reception at the Museum of Flight at 5 p.m. the first day, April 4th, and that's a place to get to mingle with the participants who are on site in the workshop, as well as other members of the local space community.
I really recommend, if you're doing this virtual, that's how I did it the first year. If you're doing it virtually, I really recommend sticking around. They host some breakout rooms that are topic specific. And this is not for the workshop that you're talking about, but for the main event that happens in May. They host workshops that are virtual, where they are topic specific. And it's pretty amazing who you get to mingle with, who you get to hear firsthand their ideas, and that your ideas are also heard. So pretty interesting group of folks. Michael Mealing is asking, is anyone from Helicity, I don't know how to pronounce that. Helicity Space coming. Do you know the attendees
I
well?
don't know. No, I haven't looked at the attendee
Register.
list recently. It's not ringing a bell.
Okay. And then his question is, how much interaction do you have with Washington's congressional delegation? Senators Cantwell and Murray control a lot of the space sector's government budgets and policies. Yes, sir, they sure do. Good for Washington. We've worked really hard at that, by the way.
So a key thing to note is that Space Northwest is not a lobbying organization, right? We are advocacy. That said, we do have advisors who serve on the state's aviation and aerospace committee, and we partner with other organizations that help elevate the voice for space within the halls of Congress.
There's some contradictory information, Mealing, about this. I will share my experience, but I've gotten some rebuttal from someone else that I trust. My experience was that Governor Inslee was kind of a space nerd, maybe a closet space nerd because he's got other priorities, but a space nerd. That's been my experience. I am told by people who also know him pretty well that he's got other priorities and space is not on his to-do list. So, a little bit of conflicting information there. My personal experience was with him when he was a congressman out in Washington, D.C., not the governor. And he was pretty interested in space-based solar power. Now, folks that work with him on a much more frequent basis than I do say that he's being pulled in a lot of other directions, so not necessarily a priority. And then Michael Mealing is also referencing the Alliance for Space Development. I definitely think that, Doyle, you should talk to Mealing about that.
Sounds great.
That's the organization that kind of runs March Storm, the advocacy group that goes up to DC and talks about stuff. So I'll make sure that y'all are connected. Mealing, if you wouldn't mind posting your link in the chat, your LinkedIn connection, and then Doyle, if you don't mind doing the same thing, that way y'all are connected. I'll connect you afterwards, but I want
Beautiful.
you to reach out. So, all right, so we've got this big event coming up, and we have just 12 minutes to chat further. So,
there's more.
More. Okay. All right. Tell me more then.
Space Data Hackers is going to be live online on March 30th, so a week from tomorrow. The easy way to know about Space Data Hackers is it's the last Thursday of every month.
Okay.
Right. 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. It's virtual. We like it being, kind of informal and virtual and very open. We've got, you talk about people flying in for Startup Weekend. We have people zooming in from Ontario and last time and Taiwan. And I remember the first time that I realized that our reach was beyond our region when somebody said, "Oh, I'm calling in from Portland." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's cool, down the highway." And then he made some kind of mention about the weather or something. I was like, "What? Which Portland are you from?" "Portland, Maine." Okay, it's a little different than we thought.
Right.
So we're going to have a solution architect from AWS's aerospace and satellite segment come in and talk about everything that AWS is doing for space and all the cool things that they've started releasing. There were some big announcements in December, beginning of December, with Planet and Geospatial. And the thing that I'm really excited about is that he's going to be demoing a live digital twin of the International Space Station. So spin that up and you want to know what's happening on ISS, like temperature, pressure, all these different gauges that they've got wired up. It's in the digital twin. So super excited about that. Yeah.
So who are the people who join Space Data Hackers? What are their skills? What are their capabilities? What's their education look like?
It is across the board, just like the Space Apps Hackathon. We have everything from students who are just kind of embarking on their studies and might be into computer science, or might be doing music and they just love space. And it goes through data scientists in the middle of their careers, or space people, or we get some old timers as well who've been looking at space data since space data started coming, right? And can tell you all about the differences between all the different Landsats, and going all the way back, and how they used to capture images on film. This is really, really cool stuff. It's really hits across the board.
Awesome. I am not a coder. I have never been a coder. I've actually actively shunned being a coder. Despite many opportunities, it's just not my skill set. But it's awesome, and it's necessary, and it's just one of those skills that the whole industry needs. I don't know how many coder jobs there are in this industry, but there's a lot of them. So pretty cool stuff. I know this isn't necessarily your area, and it's not something that Space Northwest is looking at, but Dr. Tompkins from the chat is talking about the divide between human spaceflight and space tech. And where he's coming from is he has a background in plant biology and wants to see humans move out into space. But if we're going to do that, we need to feed them. Do you have any insights on that? Do you have any comments? I know this really isn't your area, so if you want to pump this one, we can.
In a way, it really is. So yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is related to, the space and the data, right, and the software side of things. But I've got a great passion for any endeavor that ensures that humans can thrive anywhere in the universe. And in fact, the hackathon project that I mentioned with my daughter was to make exercise fun for astronauts, because that's your best countermeasure right now against the ravages of zero G on your body. And to do 2.5 hours of exercise every day sounded to her like not that much fun. Right. So we designed augmented reality games that could be played while exercising, and you get points for the exercises that you do. I care about that particular aspect deeply. It's hard. The being able to figure out how the human body is going to react, and what you can do about it in environments that are not, one full G of Mother Earth is really tough, and a lot of research needs to go into it. And that's just one aspect, right? Like you're saying, Michael, we've got to be able to grow food. We've got to be able to have babies. All these different aspects of how you become a multiplanetary species. There's a lot of work, and it's all super exciting to me.
I think it starts now. Like, we're the ones, the people on this chat, we're the ones who are actually doing the work. What was science fiction to me when I was in high school is under construction now. Not even just being financed, but actually being constructed and built. So it's an amazing time. I tried to convey that to the congressional staffers of the think tank people today, that the world that we know, that we're comfortable with, is about to undergo a fundamental change that we call the Starship Singularity. And I think that all of these problems that we're talking about with space data hackers and the National Science Foundation Engines Program, or Space Entrepreneurs, or Defense Innovation Unit, all of these programs, they come together and they weave a tapestry that is going to blanket the world. And we don't really understand it yet. We don't really know what it's going to look like. In the same way that in 1995, you didn't know what the internet was going to look like. 25 years from now, 30 years from now, we don't know what space is going to look like. But one of the things I told the congressional staffers this morning was, in the same way that there's no such thing as a .com company anymore, that there's no such thing as an internet company anymore, all companies have a digital element to them. All government government programs have a digital element to them. They will all have a space element. So what I proposed this morning was that each agency, the Food and Drug Administration, should be able to access space data. There should be an SBIR, STTR allotment for them to do space stuff. That the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, the Forestry Department, the Forestry Service, all of these organizations should have a line item allowing them to get access to space assets, or build their own, or launch something. So I think what Space Northwest is doing is vitally important for our local ecosystem, but that it has ripple effects far beyond the I-5 corridor.
Absolutely.
Not this Portland, but the other Portland, right? All the way up to Vancouver, all across the country. And this work that you're doing with the Defense Innovation Unit in New Space, New Mexico, is proof that you've got national reach, even though the organization is really young. So how old is Space Northwest? I know the answer. I want you to tell other people the answer.
I think we're about 10 months old now?
10 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing the amount of work by, again, stitching together this tapestry, how fast you have blossomed. So good for you. We're gonna wrap up here in a moment. Do you have any closing thoughts, any closing ideas? And did we miss anything that we need to talk about?
Well, I think we covered a lot. I guess my only closing thought was a similarity between, where the internet ultimately went and where space is going. I predict that there will be cat pictures in space. Almost positive of that.
A catronaut? How would you say that? A catronaut. Yes, in space. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. So with that brilliant plan, let's close out. Thank you very much, Michael Doyle, President, Space Northwest. Love having you as a guest. Want to hear more? Definitely keep us posted about Defense Innovation Unit's. The State of the Space Industrial Base meeting coming up in 2 weeks. I've put all of these links in the chat. Everybody should to follow them. And with that, thanks a lot, Michael. Appreciate it. Thanks to my team. My team is doing a great job these days. Singgi, our newest intern from Korea. Yujin Kim, doing a terrific job, also an intern from Korea. We have 2 State Department sponsored interns, so we're really happy about that. Leah, Yusuf, Rachel, all doing a terrific job on the back end pieces of this. So thanks everybody to my team. And we'll see you next week. We'll see you Monday and Wednesday next week for a continuing editions of the Dare Greatly podcast. Thanks a lot, Michael. Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.